Happy spring! Hello and welcome. Welcome back. I'm Sarah. Today, in honor of the first day of spring, I wanted to share some books that are just singing spring to me. Like, the hills are alive! Like that level singing spring to me. So I guess we could call this my spring TBR. If I actually read all of these books, I would be absolutely delighted. But it was a very helpful exercise for me to kind of curate this list so that I had some choice options when it came time to, pick my, next couple months worth of reads. Like, I want to be able to go back and look at this list and be like, yeah, this is the season. I'm in the mood. Perfect. But I also really wanted to share this list in case you are looking for recommendation or, to be reminded of some of these books in case, like me, you bought them a while ago and they've been sitting there and you're like, oh yeah, I really do want to read that. It feels like the perfect time. So I've more or less broken this into, I think, 4 very loose categories: flowers, botanical, plantastical sort of books. I know I made that word up. Tea, I don't know what it is, but just like tea parties, tea time, tea, just feels springy to me right now. Oh, Regency era England, just picturesque English countryside is just feeling very spring to me. And then anything to do with Persephone or the Persephone Hades myth, because she is the goddess of spring, and I can't seem to get enough. I even have this charm necklace that I made, I think 2 weekends ago, and I put a little pomegranate. I don't know if you can see it, but I put a little pomegranate on it in honor of Persephone and just the time of year that I was crafting this. So yeah, if you're on TikTok and you see all the girlies making charm necklaces, I highly recommend it. I ordered all of this stuff on Etsy and I sat down with a little drink. I put on Pride and Prejudice and I just sat down one Sunday afternoon. It didn't even take me the whole movie. I think I got up and I was able to get dinner started when I was done. So very fun, worthwhile activity if you are looking for something to do. Let's get into my list of spring hopefuls. So the first category I will cover are books that I have found that I'm interested in reading that have to do with plants or gardens, or maybe just the cover has flowers on it. We're going in the plant garden genre. And the first book that I feel falls in this category is Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell. This book centers a young woman named Clara whose magic accidentally causes poisonous blooms to sprout from her father's chest, which sets her off on a quest to find a way to heal him. This is touted as a whimsical YA cottagecore fantasy romance, and I mean, just look at the cover. It screams spring, because I really feel like this would just be a delightful, lighthearted read to read maybe like out at the park on a picnic one day. The next book that I'm putting in this category, like I said, these are really loose categories, but it's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know what it is. I know that The Hobbit is very cozy. I have read it once before. This is my mother's clearly beloved copy. For whatever reason, The Shire just feels like a very spring vibey sort of place. Obviously, I'm pretty sure, do they have seasons in the Shire? I don't actually know the answer to that question. That will be an interesting thing to find out. But at least, in the movies, the scenes that you see of the Shire, it just always seems so pleasant there. And I know this one is a pretty cozy read. I haven't read it in a really long time. And just the idea, and I know he goes on an adventure, and spring is a great time to kind of set off on new endeavors. And so, like I said, loose categories, but the Shire, they love to garden. They're outside all the time. So I'm including this in my kind of plants, garden, botanical category. And if you don't know, The Hobbit centers Bilbo Baggins, Frodo's uncle, and kind of the initial quest that he goes on. He meets a dragon. Lots of other things happen to him. He was expecting to have a quiet life, but then Gandalf shows up and kind of throws that out the window. The next book that I'm including, The Fairy Bargain of Prospect Hill by Rowena Miller. And this one is in my flowery category, mostly because of the cover. I mean, look at these beautiful flowers. We continue on the back. I love the little magic at the bottom. It just looks so sweet. But this book centers 2 sisters, Elaine and Delphine, And Elaine still kind of keeps to the old ways, I guess you could say, in that, you know, her family is one of the few families on Prospect Hill that still remember that the Fae are around. They might not like actually be there, but there is a Fae world. And one day, Delphine confesses to her sister that her new husband does not seem to be the man that she thought she was marrying, and Elaine kind of vows that she's going to save her sister, help her escape. But along the way, they get involved with the Fae, and they have to navigate kind of the magical and the dangerous aspects of working with the folk. From what I understand, this one falls into the cozy historic fantasy category, which I'm never opposed to. If the shot has changed at all, I'm adjusting this now. If the shot has changed at all, is because my dog just leapt up off the floor, scared me out of my, off my butt, and ran out the back door. But he managed to hit the tripod in the process, so I just thought I would include that caveat. And the last book that I have in this category is This Poison Heart by Callan Bayron. And this book centers a main character named Breesis, who has a gift in that she can grow plants from tiny seed to full bloom with just a touch. But then Breesis inherits an old estate from an aunt who passes away, and at first it seems all well and good, like maybe she can go up there and she can be surrounded by plants and trees and finally figure out how to harness this gift of hers. But there's more to this inheritance than they initially expected, including a walled garden full of some of the world's most deadly botanicals. And it sounds like Breesis has to kind of contend with not only her own magic and some dark forces that seem to be descending. It sounds really unique and really fun. And I don't think spring always necessarily means that things have to be lighthearted. So I like a dark fantasy tale, and I thought this one would be really cool to check out. The next category that I mentioned was just books that have tea in the title, or maybe tea is a facet of the story. I really just, tea parties feel like spring to me. Like, I fully intend to have a tea party either with myself or with my daughter at some point this season. Hopefully my husband will participate too. We made a point to go to tea, like a fancy tea, when we went to London almost 7 years ago. Who doesn't love finger food and tea? And, you know, when you're a grown-up, you can order champagne to go with your tea. It's great. So I have some books here that fit the bill. So the first one I have here is A Tempest of Tea by Havza Faisal. This one is on my list. I will read this one this year. I feel like just now is the perfect season. This book centers Arthi, who is the proprietor of a prestigious tea room, at least by day. The tea room transforms at night to serve a different clientele, and that different clientele is vampires, which is illegal. Having a blood house that serves vampires is actually illegal. And when threatened, it seems that Arthi has to kind of join together an unlikely gang, and they have to, you know, go on a heist. There's tea, there's vampires, there's a kind of, you know, unlikely crew coming together, and there's a heist. I love all of those inputs. I have a feeling I will really, really enjoy this book. And I'll just read you this little bit because I think it says a lot. Dark, action-packed, and swoon-worthy, A Tempest of Tea is teeming with romance and revenge, led by an orphan girl willing to do whatever it takes to save her self-made kingdom. Love that. And yes, this is my signed Waterstone special edition. I'll just show it off again because I can. The next one I have is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is also another one that's on my will read this year. I made a 24 in 2024 list that I will link below in case you're interested in checking that out. But this book is literally about a tea monk and a robot. The tea monk kind of decides to go off in the wilderness to do some soul searching. They meet a robot and the two connect. And from what I understand, this is just cozy, it's heartwarming, and it's a really feel-good story. The next one I have is Can't Spell Treason Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. It's a cozy fantasy steeped with love. Love that it's steeped with love. I just got that. And this book is having a bit of a renaissance right now. don't remember when I got this, but I know now that there are several special editions coming out. You know, that's awesome. And you can tell the two main characters in this book, Raina and Chianthe, all they want to do is open a bookshop that serves tea. Sign me up. Sounds great. However, Raina works as one of the queen's private guards, and Chianthe is the most powerful mage in existence. So I don't really know how that equals a quiet life, being able to operate a bookstore. And the back says, in a story brimming with huge comfort and quiet fireside conversations, these two women will discover just what they mean to each other and the world. I've been meaning to get to this one for a really long time. So this is probably towards the top of the priority list for spring. And the last one that I wanted to include in my tea category is the Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. So this one is a little different. The Tea Dragon Society is actually the first in what I understand is a series, and I think it's more of a graphic novel. The main character, Greta, finds a lost tea dragon in the marketplace and has to learn how to take care of it and make some friends along the way. I've seen this one mentioned on social media before, and it just sounds so heartwarming and sweet, and I thought this one would be fun to actually read with my kiddo. She's a fan of, you know, a graphic novel and also dragons. So I feel like this is a good way to, you know, continue that love of reading in our own house. My third category is just Regency era England, or, you know, picturesque countryside England. You can disagree with me, but I feel like spring is English countryside season. I've only been to England once, so I don't know if that's true, but at least in terms of like books and the pictures that I have formed in my mind, that's where I'm at. But with that being said, clearly I mean the collective works of Jane Austen would fit the bill, which I managed to find a complete set of all of her books on Audible for 1 credit, so I'm not upset about that. I think I've only ever read Pride and Prejudice, so if I had to pick one to read next, it would probably be Sense and Sensibility. That's the one I'm feeling right now, but we'll see what happens. Another book that I have that is set in that Regency era England that has a little bit more of a fairy tale spin is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. The main character, Theodora, has been cursed by the Fae, and she has no sense of like shame or embarrassment, which means that she can be, I guess, what we would call prone to societal scandal, which we know, I mean, if you've ever watched Bridgerton, is just the worst thing that can happen to you. Theodora has every intention of just wallflowering it through, you know, the season. However, she catches the attention of what I understand is like the least liked man in society, who also becomes aware of her condition as being cursed by the Fae, and things progress from there. I've heard time and time again that this one is a great comfort read, and, you know, after a long, cold winter, that sounds really nice. And a book that hopefully by the time you see this, I will have grabbed this book from the library, but the last book I have in this category is Most Ardently, a Pride and Prejudice remix by Gabe Cole Novoa. I had not heard of this remix series before this book came across my feed, but in the series of remixes, authors from marginalized backgrounds reinterpret classical works through their own cultural lens, which just how cool is that? So in this bittersweet remixing of Pride and Prejudice, we follow a trans boy yearning for the freedom to live openly, and the story is said to really center queerness in, you know, the well-known story of longing and subverting society's expectations. In this particular case, society's patriarchal and cishet normative expectations. And then my last category are stories that are about Persephone, or maybe they're a reinterpretation of the Persephone-Hades myth, because again, Persephone is the goddess of spring, and I really enjoy the story where Hades just isn't a big brute. I really enjoy the versions where Hades is misunderstood. Sure, yeah, he's like an old god and he has lots of powers and all the things, but I don't know what it is. I also, like, I've said this to other people, like, I really enjoy stories where there's a personification of death. I don't know, it just, again, it's one of those inputs that my brain is particularly tickled by. So the first book that I'm including in this category is The Swindler and the Swan by J.A. Good. I currently have this one waiting on my Kindle. This is a Hades Persephone's retelling that also has like Black Swan mixed in. I think it's the Black Swan. Clearly there's a swan. But from what I understand, Hades wants to make Demeter mad because Demeter like shows up at a party in Hades' signature color. I know that sounds, what? That's what sets this whole thing off. And Hades wants to retaliate, so he steals one of her beloved swans. Once they enter the underworld, the swan transforms into Persephone, and things go from there. I did a lot of research looking for other retellings of the Hades Persephone myth, and this one came up time and time again as one that was worth reading. Is a good one. So I will report back. I'm really excited to read it. I also have here 3 of the books from the Hades and Persephone saga by Scarlett St. Clair. We have A Touch of Malice, A Touch of Ruin, and A Touch of Darkness. These are very smutty, especially when you get further into it. Was this the last one that I read? No. This is A Touch of Darkness is the first one. I think A Touch of Ruin is the second one. Yeah, and A Touch of Malice is the third one. This one is, whoa! Be careful if you are ovulating and you read this. Just heed my warning. But this is another retelling of Persephone and Hades, wherein Persephone is posing as a college student because she just doesn't want people to know that she's a goddess, but Demeter has kept her locked up in a glass greenhouse for like her whole life, and so most of the gods don't even know she exists. But one night she goes to a club that Hades owns, and she doesn't realize that it's Hades, and she gets involved in a bet with him. And that's, in this version, you're making deals with Hades, and that's how people try to get him to help. And if they can fulfill their end of the deal, they get what they ask for, and if not, Hades gets your soul. Like, that's usually how that works. And I will say the first 2 books, I honestly found Persephone kind of annoying, but I had to remind myself, like, I was probably that annoying when I was Persephone's age. Like, she's a young woman. She's college age. She's in her early 20s. So, she matures through the book, which I was happy to see by the 3rd one. I wasn't as annoyed with her, but this is one of those things where I didn't say it was good, I said I liked it. I find these fun. And sometimes that's really all you're going for, and if you want a little spice, there's plenty of that in these. And then the last one I have here that I'm excited to check out is volume 1 of Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. Rachel Smith? Rachel Smythe? I think it's Smythe. That's how I would, yeah. By Rachel Smythe, I think it's Smythe. But yeah, this one is a graphic novel from Webtoon. I don't know what that is. Should probably figure it out. But I've just heard so many good things about this, and just the artwork in here is really beautiful. And I know that this is another reimagining of the Hades Persephone's myth that is, again, geared towards adults. And I don't know, I felt like this would be something fun to include in my spring reading that isn't something that I usually tend to pick up. And there you have it. I lost track of how many books I recommended, but if you are looking for copies of any of these, always check your local library. We gotta love the library. But I also put together a curated list for you that you can find down below. It's linked down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I would love to know if you are planning on reading any of these this spring. You can drop me a little note in the comments, or even just put a little flower emoji if you've made it to the end. I would love to see it. Thank you again so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to keep hanging out here on YouTube. Remember that I'm always rooting for you, and I'll see you with another video real soon.